Knee pain sucks, we all know that, okay? It can be really debilitating, all right? But I've got some good news for you. I was able to fix my knee pain relatively quickly, and in this video, I'm gonna share with you what exercises I did to get the ball rolling, and I'm gonna cover in detail the one old school exercise that I used, and it absolutely changed the game for me, okay? It enabled me to fix my knee pain for good. Knee pain is just a symptom of other issues, okay? Other underlying conditions. And specifically, it's a symptom of imbalances in your lower body, okay? A lack of mobility and strength. What is mobility? Okay, mobility is simply strength combined with flexibility. To be mobile, you need a combination of strength and flexibility, okay? Because you can be strong and inflexible, you can be flexible but weak, okay? So to be mobile, you need to bring those two things together, okay? It's about being strong in all aspects of movement, okay? So, i.e., at all ranges of motion and in all directions. And if you keep on working on these imbalances until they're gone, that's when you'll notice something really amazing, okay? Your knee pain will have gone. It makes sense, right? So how did I work this shit out? For me, it all started a couple of years ago when I was doing some CQB training with my team. If you don't know what CQB is, it's just an acronym for close quarter battle, and it's essentially fighting room to room inside a building to deal with armed threats. Okay, so think like hostage rescue, that kind of thing, yeah? I was number one on the door, okay, meaning I was going to be the first guy to enter the room. Now, as I crossed the threshold, which we also call the fatal funnel, so as I was crossing that threshold, I began to pivot, utilising my right leg, okay, and so most of my weight was on my right leg, all right, and immediately, man, I just got a big fucking shooting pain right through my right knee, and it was significant enough that I almost fell over, I stumbled, and I was just like, fuck, that came from nowhere, what the hell's going on? And unfortunately for me, that was just the start. I started to, because it kept happening, so I started to dwell on it, and I started to worry about it. I was worried that, on a live job, on a live operation, I'd be going through the door and the same thing would happen. I'd stumble, I would put myself and my other team members at risk, so I really started to get caught up on it and started to worry about it, and this sort of nagging thought started to eat away at me because, I live for that stuff, this is what I do. I've spent most of my career in tactical operations and stuff, so my big concern was, what if I couldn't do it anymore? What am I going to go and do next? So I started to look for solutions to the problem, okay? And it took me a little while to work out what the hell was going on with my knee, but eventually I worked it out, okay? I realised one day that the knee pain was just a symptom of another issue, muscular imbalances, like I talked about earlier. I'd been squatting in various forms for years, okay? And I was pretty confident that my legs were fairly strong. But then when I started to actually look at what I'd been doing and how I'd been training, I realised that I never actually did any single leg movements, like split squats or lateral movements like side lunges. And I realised that was the issue that I had, okay? I had unknowingly created imbalances in my lower body. I started doing single leg exercises like walking lunges, reverse lunges, Bulgarian split squats, side lunges, Cossack squats, all that kind of good stuff. And as soon as I incorporated that into my training, I saw a rapid improvement in my strength, my mobility, and importantly, the pain levels in my knee. However, every now and again, there'd be a little niggle, okay? There was a little bit of mild pain every now and again from my knee. So I knew that there was, I was still missing something, okay? There was still a gap in my training, okay? So I kept looking for answers, trying to find that solution. I tried various exercises, and then I found this one move, and it's an old school move that actually fixed my knee pain for good, all right? And that move is the horse stance. And it not only fixed my knee pain, but it's actually strengthened my lower body in ways that I didn't expect, okay? And that's an absolute game changer for me. So, if you're over 40 like me, the horse stance might just be the most important exercise that you're not doing right now. So today we're going to talk about the horse stance, and we're going to look at it in more detail because it could literally change your life. Now, you've probably seen the horse stance in kung fu movies, or you've seen, clips on TV where monks are holding this sort of weird looking squat for, hours on end. Don't panic, we're not going to be doing that, okay? You don't need to do it for hours to see the benefits, okay? You can reap the rewards of this exercise in just minutes a day. Remember, we're training to be functional, okay? We're training to be strong dads, strong mums, all that kind of stuff, okay? And to be able to keep moving freely as we get older, okay? We're not training to be elite athletes. So as far as functional training goes, the horse stance is absolutely brilliant, okay? Because it not only builds strong legs, but it also opens up your hips, those tight hips, at the same time, okay? So bang for buck, all right? But if you do it wrong, you could get some injuries, you could make things worse, okay? So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it properly, okay? And I'll talk about some of the common mistakes that people make so you can avoid those, all right? So that you can get rid of that knee pain. Why bother with, why bother with this? Why not just do regular squats, okay? And nothing against squats, okay? I love squats, but like I said earlier, I found that when I started moving outside of squats and doing single leg variations, that's when the magic happened for me, okay? So the horse stance, it's not a traditional squat, you're not moving up and down, okay? It's an isometric hold. And that means essentially you get into the position and then you stay there. When you hold that position, you're building serious endurance in your quads and your glutes, so your ass muscles. Most importantly, you are strengthening and stretching the inner thigh muscles. For most of us over 40, these muscles are pretty tight, and that causes imbalances, all right? So when you sit down into that horse stance, you are strengthening the legs while actively stretching those tight inner thighs, okay? It's a 2-for-1 deal, yeah? The other good thing about it, the other benefit of it is that it bulletproofs your knees, okay? You hold that position, you're strengthening all those little stabilizer muscles, not only around the hip, but also the knee joint, okay? And you're getting that without any impact. So really, really good exercise. And another benefit that, people often don't talk about or think about, but it's mental grit, okay? Because holding this pose, even for 30 seconds, can get pretty uncomfortable, okay? It starts to burn, all right? But by learning to deal with that discomfort, building up to 2 or 3 minutes of this pose, that translates into everyday life. You learn, as David Goggins would say, stay hard. Let's talk about the horse stance itself. Let's talk about proper form so you can get the most of the benefits and avoid any injuries. It's not complicated. We're not sending people to the moon, all right, but the details do matter, so let's dive in. First, the feet. Now, you want to step out wide, okay, wider than your shoulders. Now, everyone's different, so biomechanically there's going to be some differences here, all right, but the best thing to do is just test and adjust your foot position until you get it right. It needs to be wide enough that when you sort of sink down into that bottom position, your shins are essentially vertical. And to give you a rough starting point, turn your feet outwards, then in, then back out, and you do that 5 times. So 5 turns of your feet, and then from there you can test and adjust until you're happy with that width. Now, as for the toes, you're going to turn those out to about 45 degrees. That should be about right. Turning those toes out opens up your hips. Once you're in that position, you're then going to sink your hips straight down, okay? So imagine you're sliding your back down a wall, keeping your chest upwards. Your knees should push outwards, okay? They need to track over your toes. So if your toes are pointed out on that 45-degree angle, your knees obviously want to be pointing in that direction too. Now, what about your hands? Well, it doesn't really matter, right? Put them on your hips, hold them out in front of you. Adopt a yogi bloody prayer position. Who cares? Okay, whatever works for you and whatever distracts you from what's actually going on, i.e., your legs burning like hell. Now, if your legs want to start collapsing inwards, either stand up a little bit to reduce the depth until you get a bit stronger, or if the collapse is minimal, you can just use your hands or arms to apply a little bit of outward pressure to your knees, okay, to prevent them from coming in a little bit, all right, and give you that mental cue to keep driving them out, utilising muscles only. Now, the first couple of times that you do this, start high, all right? You don't need to achieve full depth on day one, all right? If you can, awesome, all right? But if you can't, no dramas. Just sink down until you feel, your legs starting to work, okay? Your thighs start burning, your glutes start burning, and you'll feel a stretch in the groin. Just get down that far to start with, and just over time, increase your depth, okay? And once you're down there, you're gonna stay there, okay? So hold that position, and remember, try and stay calm, keep breathing, all that kind of stuff. In the beginning, you wanna aim for around 20 to 30 seconds, all right? And I suggest setting a timer on your watch or your phone, something that's gonna keep time, okay? Because if you try and count it in your head, I guarantee you're gonna cheat, okay? You're gonna cut the time short because the discomfort levels are gonna rise, and you're gonna start counting quicker, trust me. All right, so set a timer on whatever device you've got handy, all right? And then as far as progressions go, I'll talk more about that later on. First though, we need to talk about the common mistakes and how to avoid those. Mistake number one is letting the knees collapse. This is the danger zone essentially pretty much for all squatting patterns, and the horse stance is no different. So, when you're getting tired, your knees want to start caving inwards, okay? Don't let them, okay? If your knees start caving in a little bit, you're putting massive stresses on your knee joint, okay? And so you want to actively drive those knees back outward. If you can't keep them out, you're obviously too low for your current strength level, so just stand up a little bit, okay? But like I said before, if that collapse is only minimal, you can assist with your hands or your arms just to get a little bit of support and assist driving that out to maintain the knees out and that stretch position. The second mistake that we see is the Instagram arse, okay? And that's where there's a big arch in your back and your arse is sticking out proud, all right? This, like I said, this is an Instagram, okay? So you actually want a neutral spine. You want that arch gone. So to achieve that, all you're gonna do is squeeze your arse muscles, all right? And this will tuck your tailbone in slightly. Think about stacking your rib cage on top of your pelvis, all right? Keep your torso upright, logo towards the wall. The third most common mistake I see is leaning too far forward. You want your back to be your back to be straight, and you want your torso to be as upright as possible. If you can't help but bend over, then just make sure that your back is straight, i.e., no Instagram arse, and over time just work hard to get your torso as vertical as possible. The final mistake is forcing the depth. Now, I know you want to look good, I know you want to look like you've got it mastered, all right, but you gotta have some control, and you want to be careful, all right, especially when you're first starting out. Okay, so ideally, in terms of depth, you want to get your thighs parallel to the floor, but if you force it before you're ready, you can strain something. Now, honestly, on day one, I did exactly this, all right? I went hard out, and honestly, I had to walk funny for days. It looked like I'd been riding a fucking horse or something, I was all sore right up the inside of my thighs. Groin muscles and everything were just screaming at me. So don't make that mistake. You just got to park your ego, and just listen to your body. Depth will come with time, so don't stress, all right? Just try and go a little bit further each time, and you'll get there. So that's the mistakes all wrapped up. Let's dive into the progressions and modifications of the horse stance. But before we do that, just take a moment to click the subscribe and the like buttons below this video, because I don't want you to miss out on future videos that could help you on your functional training journey. Thank you, I really appreciate it. Right, let's get back into the horse stance. If you're struggling with depth and or balance, what you can do is use a solid object to help you maintain your balance. Okay, it takes the balancing aspect out of the equation so that you can focus on it entirely on your legs and your hips and getting the position. Start here and then just build up over time. Reduce the time spent holding onto the object. So if you're down in that bottom position and you're holding onto that object, just take your hand off for as long as you can, and as soon as you start to feel your balance sliding, just put your hand back on that object and maintain that balance. And eventually you'll get to the point where you don't need to hold onto that object at all, and you can just focus on the exercise in full. Now, speaking of time, don't try to be a hero. Like I said, start with 20 to 30 seconds if you haven't done these before, okay? Because you will feel it pretty quickly. And here's the other thing about time. It's better to do 20 seconds with perfect form than a minute of garbage where your knees are caving in and your form's turned to shit, all right? quality is most important. So don't be a hero, just do your 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever it is, and then start building from there. In terms of your depth, lay a broomstick or a piece of pipe or something across the top of your thighs, and if it stays put, it means you're deep enough. All right, if it rolls off, it means you need to get deeper. In terms of progressing, the exercise goes, aim for 3 sets of 20 seconds each day. Yeah, and do that, say, 3 times a week. And then every week, just add 5 seconds until you can do 3 sets of around 3 minutes. Now, at this point, you would have developed not only really good leg strength, but an iron will, if you like. You understand the grind at this point. Okay, you've developed some mental toughness. All right, because with this exercise, once you've gone over about a minute, man, you're going to have to dig deep, yeah, and develop your mental fortitude. Like I said, many benefits of this exercise. The trick is, throughout, is just maintain control, stay calm, keep breathing, and grind it out. So look, as far as I'm concerned, a spade's a spade. I like to tell it how it is. So here goes, okay? Now brace yourself. You and I, we aren't getting any younger, okay? That's a fact, and you need to accept it, okay? And what that means is that we need to start training smarter, okay? Once we hit 40, we need to be smart about how we train. Now, I'm in my mid-40s, but I'm not far off what I was doing in my 30s when I was at my peak, okay? And that's because I changed the way that I train. I believe that the way I'm training now is smarter, and I'm training with longevity in mind, okay? And I believe that you should be doing that as well, okay? Incorporating the horse stance is a low impact, high return way to keep your hips open and your legs really strong, okay? And it only takes a couple of minutes a day. As far as I'm concerned, being too busy or too old is not an excuse to ignore those aches and pains that start developing when you get to your 40s, 50s and stuff like that, yeah? They're only going to get worse if you do nothing. So try the horse stance out and let me know in the comments how long you managed to hold it for before you had to quit. All right, that's your starting point, that's your baseline, and then come back, let me know later on, what you've managed to work your way up to. By the way, if you want to know how I train as a time-poor dad in his mid-40s, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I've got more simple, practical stuff coming your way, because you know what they say, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So take care, I'll see you next time.